76ers. 10, 9, 8, 76ers.
This is UK 76ers. My name is Ben Glasspool, and last night the Philadelphia 76ers beat the Detroit Pistons by 114 points to 110. Now, we've seen beforehand when we come straight off a back-to-back, we struggled and we've looked a bit groggy and we end up losing. And look, the Detroit Pistons aren't the best team in the world. In fact, they're the worst team in the league statistically at the moment. But the fact that we managed to get this over the line, albeit it was perhaps closer than we really should have expected it to be, it's a good sign. It's a good sign. I expected Embiid to rest. I expected maybe Simmons and Harris to get a few less minutes just so they can recover. But again, it's like because Embiid has gotten fitter, he can do these back-to-backs, even if he is traveling up to Michigan the day after a game at the Wells Fargo Center. And that bodes very, very well for us. And he had a solid game. He had 33 points, 14 rebounds, 12 or 17 from the free throw line. You think you could tell from the free throw lines that he was getting a bit tired, but it's forgiven when you're putting up the numbers he's putting up regularly and efficiently. So this game, when you looked at it again, you look at Detroit, and Detroit haven't been good. They haven't been good. Their best player's been Jeremy Grant, who's averaging around 25 or so. You do often wonder, though, if that's just an inflation in points simply because he's the only half-decent player on their team, similar to what Marcus Morris was doing on the New York Knicks last season. But he's a good player nonetheless. Blake Griffin and Derrick Rose are out, so you'd expect this to be a pretty routine win. But the Detroit Pistons, to their credit, they were fought hard and they managed to do pretty well in this game, and they kept it tight. We only won by 4 points, and they kept coming back at us. Sviva Mikhailuk, Wayne Ellington were hitting threes all the time. Josh Jackson had a few good plays. But, credit to the Detroit Pistons because they just didn't go away. And there was an occasion in the late of the third, early fourth where I want to say we're around 11 points up, and it looked as if we'd start running away with it, and they just kept coming back. So that's just the NBA. Every game is a difficult game, and this is sort of exemplified by what we saw happen last night. But anyway, in the video last time, I talked about how Ben Simmons' game against the Celtics could be a catalyst for change, and this game sure looks like that I was right. That Ben Simmons has turned a corner. That he's out of this this bad stretch of form, and he's ready to come play again. And from the offset, he was aggressive. He was going to the line. We've always talked about how he was perhaps sometimes looks to avoid contact, which means that the shots he put up that ends up not being that great, and he doesn't get to the line as a result. He went to the free throw line 12 times tonight, made 10 of them, including 2 very clutch free throws towards the end of the fourth, where if he didn't make them, then it was a one possession game. He was fantastic the whole way through. His defense was on a level. He was on Jeremy Grant, who I said is probably the Detroit Pistons' best player. Jeremy Grant averages 25 points. He had 3 of 19 from the field. Ben Simmons kept him to 15% shooting from the field. That is incredible. It is incredible. And, the points I can think of where Grant did get his way was when simply Ben Simmons wasn't on him. The bloke is a lockdown defender, and if he maintains this, there's no reason why he can't be Defensive Player of the Year. He was my pick before the season started, and I still back that because when you see performances like this, he is just electric. He's so good at what he does on the defensive end. But I want to talk about that aggression again. We always talk about what we want from Ben Simmons, the shots, and 3-point shots, perhaps a fader or a mid-range. All the 20 points he got, of course, 10 of them came from the line. The rest of them, 5 of the 7 from the field, all just came in the flow of the offense. And it wasn't hard. It was him getting aggressive. It was him posting up people who he knew he had an advantage against. Nice soft finishes with both hands. It's just the basics. It just shows how good he is. If he can just do the basics without a jump shot, he can get 20 points a night easily with 9 rebounds, with 7 assists, with 3 steals, with 1 block. Just imagine what we want to consolidate what we know he can do right now. We want to make sure that he can just consistently do this, because that's been an issue. Of course, it's been an issue. We need to make sure he can do this night in, night out. Then we move on to everything else. And then we might start seeing what we hope Ben Simmons will turn into. But tonight he was fantastic. I expect this to continue on because this is Ben Simmons. We've seen more of this Ben Simmons than we have the other one. People they like to lose their minds and say, "Oh no, trade him. This is him. This is what he is." This is Ben Simmons. We wouldn't be angry if Ben Simmons was doing those other performances if that was who he was, if that was what we just genuinely come to expect. This is what we expect from him at a minimum level. And I think we're going to see more of it for the remainder of the season because this is who he is. So let's look at the rest of this game. As I said, Detroit Pistons kept it unbelievably tight to the point where they were actually up 3 at the end of the first. Offense started, it was electric. Normally we start quite sluggishly, but we started well. We're making seemingly everything. Tobias was fantastic again, 3 of 5, 60% from 3. He's a 50, 40, 90 guy now. And his defense, he's come on leaps and bounds. He's clever with his defense. He doesn't jump into things. He keeps his feet planted, keeps his arms up, and says, "If you want to go get the bucket, you got to go around me." And teams struggle against him. He's a good defensive weapon all of a sudden, and he's just turning it. Look, is he the max contract player? We would hope, because a max contract player for me, where I say a max contract player, you're looking at 23, at least 23 points per game, maybe 25, and an all-star. He could maybe make the all-star team. I don't know. But the points wise, no. But he's still contributing something positive to this team. You've got to not think about that contract and think, well, what is he contributing something positive to this basketball franchise? And he is. He's getting efficient points. He was on to finish with 17 points again today, so it's near enough his average. Average is about 19. And he did everything efficiently. He hit a really good late three off the dribble in the game last night, of course. And that just set us on our way for the rest of the fourth quarter. But one thing that has annoyed me, and this happens at the end of the first and the end of the third. Admittedly, the team at the end of the third somehow seems to pull out the bag more so than the one at the end of the first. But it's these rotations. And Doc, I've talked about the 2K rotations where everyone comes in, everyone comes out, they're not staggered. And Doc needs to figure out how to work this, because this is what always gets us. And this is why we always seem to end first quarters trailing, because the team that finishes struggles. And it's not to say these players are bad. Like Tyrese Maxey's a good player, Shake Milton's a good player, Matisse Thybulle's a good player, Dwight Howard's a good player, Furkan Korkmaz, I can take him or leave him, but he is a good player on his day. And I don't think he didn't have the worst game ever today. But they need someone to help him out. Furkan Korkmaz is a shooter. Shooters need space. How do we get space? You have Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid on the floor to create space for them. Matisse Thybulle and Dwight Howard just can't shoot. Matisse Thybulle is very, very streaky, and defenses know we can just leave him open and we'll just take whatever happens. We'll give him the shot. So immediately there, you have two people on that five, that bench unit, that defenses know they can't shoot. So that completely, lessens the amount of space. And someone like Tyrese Maxey needs to penetrate. He needs that space so that he can, free up that space for his floater, or even Shake Milton when he penetrates. He gets to the rim pretty well and can draw those and ones and can get the buckets. They need space, and if they've got someone like Matisse and indeed Dwight Howard on the floor at the same time, they're going to struggle. So if you stagger these minutes, you get the best out of everyone. You get it so Furkan has his space. You get it so Matisse can have a bit more space, so perhaps gives him a bit more time to hit those shots. Because he can hit them, we know he can, but he perhaps needs a bit more space than others. Or even if he's not making those shots, well, we've got someone that can bring it offensively. So yeah, you can just do your stuff on the defensive end. Someone else can do the offensive side of things because we've got Ben Simmons, we've got Joel Embiid or whoever else. So I do feel sorry for that bench unit, because I think in many respects, they're almost set up to fail. Look, I don't think, of course, Doc Rivers isn't intending for this, but he needs to work out how to get the best out of each player from the bench and who to pair them up with. Because if I'm a bench player, my game would have come a hell of a lot easier if I've got an all-star level player with me. And that's just the same with every franchise, not just the Sixers. It'll be the same across the board. So that needs to be worked. And these rotations, I really don't like them and have cost us. They really have cost us. And it's just simple working out. And I think sometimes with rotations, you figure it out as the season goes on. So perhaps, I should expect it to be a bit rusty at the start. But we've seen this for a couple of games now, and it has really frustrated me. To their credit, that same lineup to the end of the third quarter, they came good because Shake Milton, he had a really poor first half, but then he got 8 points over the span of the third and the fourth, and that really set us up for a really good finish towards the end. But even then, I just don't think Milton and Maxey especially are properly their abilities aren't properly maximized in this rotation, and that's because we need to stagger them. We need to make sure they're paired up with the right people. But anyway, enough of that. Second quarter came, and this was frustrating. We only got we did actually outscore them on the second, but the start of the second was the frustrating thing, and it does tie into the whole lineups idea of things. There was turnovers. There was a lack of plays. We really struggled to create offense. And again, with this bench unit, we struggled to create offense because I think Maxey didn't seem to have enough minutes. And look, Milton's really good, but is he a point guard like in the sort of the traditional sense that can create plays and create for others? I don't think he is. I think he's a fantastic combo, and I think he's a great sixth man. But is he a true? Well, Max isn't a true point guard either, but he's a better creator in my opinion, with his quick hands, his penetration, his ability to find the open guy. So when Maxi is getting less minutes for Furkan Korkmaz, which again is increasingly frustrating me, then we struggle because we don't know how to create offense. And then it seems like Matisse and Dwight Howard have the ball for far too much. Matisse isn't a creator, Dwight Howard isn't a creator. And then we run down the shot clock, and then all of a sudden we have 5 or 6 seconds left, and we're just sort of there like, well, we don't know what to do. Let's chuck up a shot. It breaks, and then they go out there and score. And that was another thing, the transition defense. And this is in the fourth quarter, especially. The reason why the Pistons kept coming back is because we can't defend in transition for whatever reason. It's an issue that's reared its head for many games this season, and it hasn't been sorted. It's too easy for teams in transition, and I often contrast that with how we go in transition. When teams break against us, you can just guarantee it's a point. You can book it. It's a point. They're going to get there. When we go in transition, it's we're really going to muck this up, and it shouldn't be that way. And we need to focus in on how to just stop that, how to get back quickly. And that is a very annoying thing that keeps happening. But we talk about defense, and I was criticizing the transition D. And when we talk about Ben Simmons, there's this one play I do want to highlight from Ben Simmons. DeLon Wright had a top of the key. He was trying to do a few plays and a few between the legs moves, try and throw Ben Simmons off. He has none of it. Slaps the ball out of his hand, dives on the ball. Danny Green gets at the other end. 2 points, easy layup, and this is just fantastic. It's such refreshing. It's dogged basketball. This is such an easy game to slack off after the highs of yesterday's game against the Celtics. And when you're putting in plays like that, when you're working really, really hard to get the win against a team who, no disrespect, they're just not very good. When you're putting in plays like that, that only bodes well for the team. So look, that second quarter didn't start too well, but again, when those starters came back in, and these starters for us have been fantastic. I believe we're 9-0 when all 5 of our starters play. This is what happens. The intensity rises on both ends. You have shot makers, you have shot creators, you have people that can shoot the three, you have people that shoot in the post, that can post up. We have it all. Speaking of 3-point specialists on that sort of side of things, Seth Curry had 14 points, and none of them came from behind the arc, which is pretty crazy because when you think Seth Curry, think 3-point sharpshooter, but he was showing he can get points anywhere else in the mid range, going up to the hoop, and that was fantastic. Look, his 3-point shot will always be a healthy one and will always drain, and tonight it wasn't to be. But because he was finding shots elsewhere, and I think that's such a great indicator to us because, of course, we've only really seen Seth Curry as some guy that can just shoot the lights out from behind the arc. This showed us there's so much more to his game. It really is, and I think he can be a creator as well. Obviously, we've got Ben Simmons at the point. There's no real need. But Seth Curry could easily, take over the reins for lead a second unit if for whatever reason we needed him to. But he was fantastic. Danny Green struggled again a bit from 3, and look, his defense is good, but he's just, you can tell the fact that he's not got that extra bit of pace is really kind of worrisome. And when you got quick players like we had Jaylen Brown last night, and then you're going to have like Jeremy Grant and it was Svi Mykhailiuk and Ellington coming off screens so easily, and Danny Green just can't keep up. So that's going to have to be worked on. Look, I do think Danny Green's contract, I do like Danny Green. I do think he's bringing something positive to this team. Don't get me wrong, but he's got a very tradable contract. So people talk about, can you do Danny Green plus Matisse plus X amount of picks for Levine? That would be a fantastic trade. Whether or not it's possible remains to be seen. I'm thinking, look, I think this is probably a very poor take, but I'm thinking, can we do Danny Green, maybe Matisse as well? I don't know, few picks, maybe not few picks, but Danny Green, Matisse. I don't want Matisse to be part of this because we all know the Nets need defense, and whilst we of course do need to make sure we have people solid on the defensive end, having a guy like Joe Harris who shoots above 40% from 3. I don't think the Nets are going to want him anymore simply because they've got their offense sorted. They've got those 3 players. If we can somehow get Joe Harris have alongside Seth Curry, to play with Ben Simmons, to play with Joel Embiid, to play with Tobias Harris, then that would bode so well for this team. Look, that's just my own little fantasy. I'm not sure if there's any legs into that trade, and also, of course, this will be a conference rival, so that might muddy the waters a bit. But that'll be one I'll keep my eye on, because I think the Nets are signing to a big deal, multi-year deal, and if they can get Danny Green, they get his expiring. He could be pretty solid for them on defense in the playoffs. And then if we have to include Matisse, that's a young guy they can help on defense. And then on top of that, they'll have $15 million freed up on their cap, so they can maybe go get a decent vet that can defend on a decent contract next summer. But that's just my idea. Bielitsa just came up apparently in a couple of trade rumors. So 3-point shooting power forward. I would still rather get PJ Tucker if that's possible. But that's a bit of a sidetrack by trade rumors. But who doesn't love a trade rumor? But yes, that was the Detroit game. I think we just about covered all bases. It was just sort of very similar to how it usually is. In the fourth quarter, we tighten up defensively. Embiid had a fantastic charge. He had a couple great blocks. Admittedly, it was, like I said, it was tighter than it was expected to be, and that's because in the fourth quarter they got those fast break opportunities. They got a lot of free throws. But we got over the line, and I'd hate to use that. Everyone seems to be saying it on Sixers Twitter, and it's like, this is a game we would have lost last year. It kind of would be. I think this would have been a game we would have lost last year, and this is, again, it shows the growth of this team. The improvements made in this roster means that games like this, coming off a back-to-back, you've got to then immediately fly out to Detroit, Michigan, and you've got to immediately go play the Pistons in the evening, and then you've got to stay there for a bit. All this stuff plays on you. You get fatigued. Mentally, you get fatigued. But we stuck in there, and we got the win, when sometimes it looked as if we might just let the game slip away from us. So we play Detroit again tomorrow, I believe. I wouldn't be surprised if there are a couple of rests, because we do have the Lakers coming to town the game after. But who knows? We got a new Joel Embiid who might be like, well, I'm ready to play all the games that you need me to play. We'll have to wait and see. But anyway, thanks very much, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you all for the next Detroit game. Bye now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.